Okay. So we want to welcome everybody here tonight, and we especially want to thank Kwame and Hy for coming tonight and sharing their amazing books. If you don't have one yet, you should definitely purchase one.
Sherry.
And they might even autograph one for you. So definitely grab them. They have a lot of lessons to share about their lives and what they've been through. And yeah, we're just happy to have them here in Lambertville. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Sherry Honkala, and I'm part of the Poor People's Army, which is also a part of the Poor People's Economic Human Rights Campaign.
Which is also a part of the Second Rainbow Coalition.
Which is also a part of the Second Rainbow Coalition.
We ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, most of you know my story from if you were here watching the movie. I'm just going to add a few things to that because I want to give Kwame his time. I want to explain a little bit of my book and how it was written. And I just want to read some different chapters, small chapters to you. The book is written specifically to reach white people, okay? I'm not qualified to organize any other color but myself. And I think it's meant to reach mostly poor whites and white supremacists, as a way of just giving them information and introduction to how you can organize. So I'll start off with the introduction is making of a hillbilly, a revolutionary hillbilly. When we say South, we mean south of the Canadian border. That's Malcolm X. Okay, the United States has always maintained a white underclass whose role in the greatest scheme of things has been to cushion national economic shocks through the disposability of their labor, with occasionally time off to serve as bullet magnets in the defense of the empire. All my life, I've been a hillbilly. Since 1967, I've been a revolutionary hillbilly. Over the past 5 decades of my life, I have waged a war against poverty and racial injustices. I was a founding member of the Young Patriot organization. We were a group of Southern white youth dedicated to serving and defending our community, an impoverished neighborhood in Chicago called Uptown. We were Southerners whose families migrated to Chicago's Uptown neighborhood looking for work. We came to form a part of the first Rainbow Coalition, working together with the Black Panthers and the Puerto Rican Young Lords. The Rainbow Coalition built unity across the color lines, starting with our common experiences with poverty. The Patriots fought for freedom and equality in a city that denied us both. We fought against racism, police brutality, and city planners who administered the urban renewal program to force poor people out of their homes. Modeled after the Black Panther Party for self-defense, pantries and legal services. Until recently, the Patriots' history was only cited in the footnotes of books about the Students for a Democratic Society, the Black Panther Party, and the New Left. In recent years, there have been 2 books which have uncovered parts of the history: Hillbilly Nationalist, Urban Race Rebels and Black Power, Community Organizing in Radical Times by Amy Sony and James Tracy. They were the first to take our legacy seriously. From the bullet to the ballot, the Illinois chapter of the Black Panther Party and racial coalition politics in Chicago by Jacoby Williams examines the original Rainbow Coalition's political platform and the leadership of the Black Panther chairman, Fred Hampton. Throughout the years as a radical organizer, I have taken notes about what I've seen. I want to explain who we were as revolutionary people, why we started the Patriots, and what we hope to accomplish. My work stems from my experience as a poor person from the South. It draws on my life in Uptown and the challenges I personally faced as a result of police brutality, poverty, class hatred, and other forms of harassment, and how it refined my ability to organize. Most importantly, I attempt to preserve the history of a forgotten people dealing with the brutal conditions of migration, starvation, slum living, death, disease, classism, racism, police brutality, and even murder. We were a struggling people fighting to keep our identity and dignity in a city that would not allow us to assimilate and would not accept us when we tried. I want to demonstrate how a group of poor people, uneducated to the process and techniques of organizing, stepped up to demand to be heard and refused to be victim of an oppressive system. This book is my attempt to take these notes from my notebook so that they can be used to the next as to confront the massive inequality and resurgence of organized white supremacy. They have in front of them the task of facing down an environmental catastrophe. I hope that by sharing my experiences, the success and failures of organizing, that this book might make their work a little easier. That's the introduction. I want to just go through the book a little bit and pinpoint a few things that most of you saw the movie, so I just want to do another thing, a few other readings here that talks about our racism and how we came to try to be non-racist. Fighting for solidarity and racial equality. The issues that the civil rights movement was focusing on in Black communities were similar to those that we had identified in Uptown and other poor white communities in the United States. The Young Patriots were about building strong alliances with all poor peoples by exposing the conditions of the poor whites compared to those of other racial and minority poor communities. We hated racism and white supremacy. Racism was a demon that had to be driven out and slain if we were going to have unity with other groups. This was consistent with our belief that all people have a right to self-determination and freedom. For many, fighting the demons of racism may not seem monumental, but for many of us, raised in an environment of indifference to other groups and fed a steady diet of racism and segregation, it was a gigantic demon to be slain. We had to change to make life tolerable and have some sort of meaning. We were used to change. On a daily basis, our entire life was about changing. And living in Uptown influenced us to change to meet adversity head on. We came to realize that if we were experiencing the conditions of adversity, then other groups, like other people of color and others, were experiencing the same. And that was one of the statements we made when we were confronting racism. We also, believed in housing. We wanted to help our community with housing, so I just wanted to read the people's proposal. They were destroying our neighborhood with urban renewal. Many people were being forced out. And we proposed to the city that we could develop our own community. And Mayor Daley, the way that he always changed communities was to put some type of an institution, an educational institution or whatever, and change the whole scene of the community. And that's how he would attempt to gentrify the communities. He had already pushed the Puerto Ricans into 3 different communities. He put in the luxury apartments. He would put in, mostly colleges, and he had a plan for Uptown to put in a city college. And this was a part of the urban renewal. We came back with a different plan. We got together with some of the other organizations and proposed our own village plan. Eventually, the name became Hank Williams Village, because Hank Williams was a Southern, country singer that everybody knew. So it was a change from the People's Village to Hank Williams. So here's what we had done. The Hank Williams Village was designed as a Southern town. The plan sought to rehabilitate housing structures that could be saved. Housing in locations that destroyed. It would meet the needs of the poor and working class by offering low-income housing with a cul-de-sac plan and ample parking. The plan displayed some individuals' homes and condominiums and proposed ideas about securing loans for those who could eventually buy a permanent home. Services would be available through a pharmacy, legal services, park and recreational, playgrounds, cooperative food programs, laundry facilities, employment services, and a hotel for new arrivals. A village hall would serve as a community meeting place and administer collection of rent. Further, the coalition proposed alternative sites in the North Uptown and the old Riverview Amusement Park, which had been vacant for many years. Both sites were denied because the location was too far north and the owners of Riverview wanted to develop businesses there. Planning for the Hank Williams Village involved residents who lived in the geographical area. It would be located in the area bound by, these are the streets in Chicago, Montrose on the south, Beacon on the west, Wilson on the north, and L-Tracks parallel to Broadway. It would provide low-income housing while also being an economically integrated community. It was intended to be a cooperative community. It will provide services which would be economically and socially beneficial to all residents, and which at the same time will serve to bind people together in a feeling of mutual responsibility and mutual advantage. The original proposal of the Voice of the People organization of the Uptown Conservation Committee outlined a brief statement. As the Hank Williams Village is intended to meet the needs of citizens in neighborhood government, it is, to the best of our knowledge, the only plan for urban renewal in Uptown, which has risen spontaneously for the needs of the community residents. And as such, is the plan which can best guarantee continuing participation of residents. The UCCC, which was the Uptown Community Conservation Council, wanted to avoid making a decision on the Hank Williams Village and stated that the proposal would have to secure funding sources before any action could be taken. Within 2 months, council members were surprised to learn that the coalition had raised $475,000 in funds from individuals and businesses for construction. Salk, Ward, and Salk, a major mortgage house, described the coalition proposal as economically feasible and agreed to pledge funds if the Federal Housing Administration would guarantee the loan. Harvey Ralston, chairman of the Realty Company of America, proposed his company for residential construction. The Ravenswood Uptown Interfaith Fellowship, which was made up of 15 churches, the Young Patriots, and 9 of the 46 property owners within the proposed college area also pledged their support. For those landowners who did not want to participate in the program, funds would be raised to buy or to help remodel, upgrade their communities, their buildings, and contracts that would ensure fairness. Further, due to deceptive practices of the UCCC, Rodney Wright proposed he was an architect that had come in and volunteered and designed this village. That no decision be made until a committee of poor community residents and UCC representatives be set up to make decisions on the plan. The discussion was tabled until the next meeting. After the meeting, the chair of the UCCC, Chair Urania Demoffley, further frustrated coalition members by her statement to a Chicago Tribune newspaper reporter. Mr. Wright's discussion of commitment has been too vague. She said she did not know how much time will be required by the committee to study the situation and determine whether there is hope for a residential development for the proposed site. And I do this because of the housing that you guys are doing. I thought this would fit right in there. The Patriots and the Poor People's Campaign felt that the village proposal had been presented in a clear and precise presentation, but once again, community concerns were being ignored. The UCC had no intention of handing over a community victory, and has always performed their role as a rubber stamp for the daily machine. Then in a surprise UCC meeting, where plans for the community and the committee meeting were to be discussed, the village plans were referred to the Chicago City Council, which voted to approve the building of the City College, Chicago City College. Daley had won again. The Patriots knew that the UCC and the Uptown Chicago Commission had to be dealt with in a more militant manner and pledged to disrupt all the committee against the poor, took over their meetings, disrupted their plans, and halted temporarily their plans for the city college. Several committee members refused to come to public meetings because they were afraid of the residents and the militancy of the Young Patriots. So I just wanted to know that we were involved at this point in housing. We were involved with higher education. We set up an educational street, come to go to school. That's how I was reading a 3rd grade level. But I do have a college degree now, and we did have ways of helping people. We fought police brutality. We had a march on the police station. Many other programs that I don't have time to go into, but you saw most of it on the film. So with that, I'll let Kwame take it, or you want to ask questions about this one now, or read the book.
All right. I dedicated. Okay. I want to start with this dedication at the beginning of my book. I said this book is dedicated to Leon Benson and Royal Amos, who had spent over 23 years and over 15 years respectively in prison for crimes that the state of Indiana knows that they did not commit. I also dedicate this book to Alonzo Hayes, my stepfather, who passed away in 2020. Uh, I'm starting off with this dedication because, as a lot of y'all know, a friend of mine, Leon Benson, recently was released from prison after spending 25 years nearly in prison for a crime he didn't commit. Uh, that's been something a lot of people out here know I've been pushing for really since I got out. Like I got out 7 years ago. The first 2-3 months, I jumped on a radio station, gave an interview talking about Leon Benson. You know what I mean? There's a whole lot of wrongfully convicted people in prison to this day. And I made a vow to him. I said, man, when I get out, man, I'm not gonna forget about you. Like I'm gonna push your case and scream your name and fight for your exoneration while I'm out here. And I talk about his story in my book. I'm gonna read a little bit of his case to y'all. You know what I mean? It's important to me to came out here and tried to reach back and pull him out because he was the first prisoner I came across in prison that was innocent. Like I went in prison for something I did, you know what I mean? And I was mad as hell the whole time in there until I came across him. You know what I mean? I was like, man, if you can like really still wake up every day and find meaning within this suffering, you know, he's the one that really gave this meaning aspect to this book, and I'm gonna read that part at some point. But I just want to acknowledge him, you know, finally getting out. And not only is he just getting out after 25 years, his daughter was 2 years old. She's 27 now. Having a chance to, you know, live life and get his life together. But he's helping reach back and get this other brother I dedicated this book to. He's been giving interviews, like he's sought after. Some of y'all probably saw his case on CNN and some of the other different radio and news outlets and stuff. But he's been giving interviews talking about Roy Amos as well. You know, he don't know Roy Amos, but he knows me, and he knows I fought for him, and I'm trying to fight for this brother. So now he has that platform. He's speaking out. Hey, you know, Roy Amos is innocent as well. Exonerate Roy Amos. You know what I mean? But we ain't gonna stop there. We're gonna try to free a lot of these brothers and sisters, but also some of these political prisoners and stuff. You know what I mean? This is giving us a platform to, you know, talk about real issues like free Mumia. You know, we out here around close to Philadelphia, free Mumia. We know he is an innocent person that y'all convicted him based on his politics. He's a political prisoner. For almost 50 years now. You know what I mean? So this is an important thing I want to start off my presentation about. But to segue to how I'm even here today, like I said in my presentation yesterday, like we all woke up at different times. You know what I mean? We woke at some of us in the morning, some of us in the afternoon, some of us not at all, not yet. You know what I mean? But it's like consciousness is the same way. You know, we come to consciousness in different ways. Some of it through trial and error, some of it more systematic. Like Galen and Sherry was talking about, they learned it on the fly at different times. You know, learned about the system or learned about the nonprofit by bumping their head, the electoral politics by bumping their head, and they able to come back and teach us. You know what I'm saying? And I came across consciousness in a unique way. It was like I'm at the bottom of my life. I went to prison for a bank robbery. Went to prison angry. They dehumanizing us, denigrating our humanity. You know, I started fighting back against the pigs in there. You know what I mean? Beat up a couple police in there, stabbed one before, caught a case, actually beat it. You know, I'm proud of that. I know they hate that. You did, pigs, you know. But but on them lockup units, that's where my education started. That's because I was at the bottom and I was forced to look in the mirror and be like, man, why is shit so fucked up? You know what I mean? And I want to read that part because it shows that I'm just like everybody else. You know, there's nothing different. Some people like, dang, Kwame, you only been out 7 years. You did this, you did this. Yeah, but it was something I had to develop in myself and come to see in myself. You know, this is what we really teaching the people. Like, we teaching you that you have to find that greater you within. You know what I mean? It's in there. It's dormant. It's just haven't been developed. And this is how I'm going. How I got to the point of where I'm doing the stuff I'm out here to doing today, fight for the people and stuff. I had to develop that part, but I had to first see it. You know what I mean? And that's how I came to acknowledge that. So this is chapter, if people want to follow along, chapter 6, page 69. It's called The Shoe. Prison within inside of prison. 23 hours a day locked in your cell. Imagine doing 18 years of your life in prison, but over 10 years of it under those conditions. What went crazy, all kind of stuff. This is how I got my redemption. This is how I maintained my sanity. This is how I held on to my humanity under the most harshest conditions. You know what I mean? And still come out here with my humanity intact and be able to relate to the people, talk to the people, you know what I mean? Fight for the people and stuff, you know what I mean? So it's page 69, the third paragraph. It was around this time that I started really turning to books. Buddy, which is one of my best friends that was in there with me, Buddy initially piqued my interest while we were in the general population together. I had caught him coming back from the general library with a few books in his hand. Somewhat amused, I asked him what he was doing with those books. He said he was educating. Once he got to Wabash, which was the prison we was at, Wabash Valley Correctional Facility in Indiana. Once we got to Wabash, he continued his self-education by reading books in the general library. I was impressed by him teaching himself how to read and write, but I didn't understand why he felt the need to read books about Black history and Black consciousness. To me, I view that as becoming institutionalized. The way I viewed life at this juncture was that nobody could tell me anything in a book if they hadn't walked in my shoes, literally. All that Black consciousness, Black power shit, I viewed as being subjects I had no interest in learning about. I didn't want to learn about our history because what I figured at that time was that we really didn't have any substantial history. I always viewed our history as starting with slavery and ending with the civil rights movement. At least that's what they implied at all the schools that I had attended growing up. This unusual conversation with Buddy gangster. Initially, he tried to give me a Black consciousness book, but I outright rejected that. I told him, bro, I'm not on none of that Black power, Nation of Islam shit, period. I wasn't trying to go to prison and leave drastically different than when I had arrived. I wasn't going to be converting to Islam, changing my name and wearing afros when I got out. I thought all that shit was for the birds. The only thing I was trying to do was survive prison and make it back to the streets one day. That's all. After I read Donald Goines' book, I developed a thirst for hood books. When I brought that first book back to Buddy and asked for another one, he offered me another Black consciousness book to read. Like the first, he offered one of those genre of books. I told him I was good, and that wasn't my cup of tea today, tomorrow, or the next century. Instead of being too forceful, he relented and gave me another hood book. This time, he gave me Pimp by Iceberg Slim. After I read that book, I realized that pimping wasn't cool at all. In fact, Iceberg Slim made me look at pimping as one of the worstest form of modern day slavery. Today, I still feel the same. Nevertheless, when I returned that book back to him and he offered me another Black consciousness book, I relented. He told me since I liked all the other books he had given me, why not give this Black consciousness book he was offering me a chance too? I only took it because he said he wouldn't force any more on me if I didn't like the one he was giving me. I figured I would read this one book. One. And then afterwards, he would stop coming at me with all this Black power nonsense. I looked at the cover of it, Visions for Black Men by Naeem Akbar. To my surprise, as I began to read it, I noticed that the author was actually on to something. The premise of the book was to highlight the difference between men and males. Up until this time in my life, I had dismissed the need to read books. I viewed education only as a passport to getting what society said I needed to get a good job and make a better life for myself. I didn't think anyone could understand my plight without living in my shoes, literally. Now, I was seeing that this brother who had never met me actually understood a lot about me from the words in this book. I saw a lot of myself in his illustration of how he defined a man. Nigga, fuck as many women as you could and have the respect of the streets and your peers. He was showing me that was what males did. They simply lived their life through the power of their testicles. Quote unquote being a man or quote unquote being a real nigga as defined by the streets placed the immature outlook over a mature world outlook that gave preference to one's responsibilities, priorities, accountability to their community above all else. It meant becoming a real grounded individual that always tried to better themselves over keeping up with the Joneses. What really stood out to me as I read that book is that a lot of the guys in prison seem to be males, not men. It didn't matter if they were 18 or 80. Some of them still had a male mentality and not a true mentality of a well-grounded man. After reading that book, it made me start to look at books and self-education differently. Carter G. Woodson once wrote in The Miseducation of the Negroes, quote, philosophers have long conceded, however, that every man has two educators, that which is given to him and the other that which he gives himself. Of the two kinds, the latter is by far the more desirable. Indeed, all that is most worthy in man, he must work out and conquer for himself. It is that which constitutes our real and best nourishment. What we are merely taught seldomly nourishes the mind like that which we teach ourselves, unquote. By the time I got to the shoe, I was eager to start my self-education. I wanted to understand why the world was so fucked up and unfair. It seemed like my life was being controlled by an unseen force. I just couldn't put a circle around what that force was. I didn't want to simply blame the devil, everything on the devil. I figured that he had a hand in it, but I felt there was a tangible, mundane reason as well. I didn't really know where to start, but a friend of mine who was on 1200 range with me helped me in this endeavor. He sent me this Beta Wawa 2 Book 11 journal that had 3 speeches by Fred Hampton. Before then, I didn't know anything about Chairman Fred Hampton Sr. I hadn't even heard his name before and knew really nothing about the original Black Panther Party. I had always assumed they were the black version of the Ku Klux Klan. At least that's what a preacher on TV once referred to them as being. When I read the speech he gave in 1969 titled Power Anywhere There's People, I immediately took a strong liking to Fred Hampton. The fact that he was 21 years old when the government had assassinated him, and I was 21 years old at the time, myself at the time, I could relate to him. Even though I was only reading his I had been on time. When I came across Fred Hampton, it felt as if my cause had introduced itself to me through his charisma. I never heard anyone speak like him, not even Malcolm X. At the end of his speech, he said, quote, we in the Black Panther Party, because of our dedication and understanding, went into the valley knowing that the people are in the valley, knowing that our plight is the same plight as the people in the valley, knowing that our enemies are on the mountaintop. To our friends are in the valley, and even though it's nice to be on the mountaintop, we go into the valley because we understand there's work to be done in the valley. And when we get through with this work in the valley, then we got to go to the mountaintop. We going to the mountaintop because there's a motherfucker on the mountaintop that's playing king, and he's been bullshitting us. We got to go to the mountaintop, not for the purpose of living his lifestyle, living like he lives. We got to go to the mountaintop to make this motherfucker understand, God damn it, that we coming from the valley. Unquote. I was impressed. I wanted to learn more about this unknown leader no one told me about. As well as the original Black Panther Party he was a part of. I learned in that Vita Wawa 2 journal that the free breakfast programs, about the free breakfast programs the original Black Panther Party had. I learned about the street organization and how a number of them had worked alongside them. Also discovered that the FBI had pitted other street organizations against the Panthers to disrupt the good work they were doing in the community. I hadn't heard any of those things in the schools that I had attended growing up. I wondered what else they were hiding from me. I was determined from that day forth to study everything I could. I started realizing there was a whole lot they didn't tell me about during my formative education in school. Or should I say, miseducation in those schools. That right there, highlights that moment that I woke up for the first time. Like I was resistant. Like a lot of us, when we become conscious, we forget where we came from and what mindset we had. You know, we think like people when we meet the younger dudes out here on the streets, younger sisters out here, like they supposed to listen to us just because we're older or because we this and we that. You know, we are leaders in the community. But a lot of them can't relate to us. You know what I'm saying? Because we not coming and meeting them where they already are. Like this is a brother that couldn't read and write that helped me wake up for the first time. He was already becoming aware that we need to read, we need to study, we need to understand our history, our culture. We need to waken up to the realities of the world we lived in. But he understood where I was at that time. So he piqued my interest in reading at first. My comprehension in reading was low. You know, that's one reason why I didn't like to read too. You know what I mean? Is because I couldn't. I read this whole page. I don't know what the hell I just read. You know what I mean? My mind is wondering. I'm just reading words, but not internalizing. You know what I mean? But then when I started my interest in reading started to take hold, and I started, even though it was not a positive source I went to initially, it just sparked in my interest. You know what I'm saying? And then once my interest was sparked, now I'm open to a lot more influences when it came to reading books and stuff. Like, think about this, Iceberg Slim, Pimp. That's not the most conscious book, but it actually taught me something by negative example. You know what I mean? I can relate to him. He was out living a street life, but in a different type of way. But it made me think, it's like, dang, man, this pimping shit, man, that's what it really is. Like, that's horrible. Like, why would somebody do that? You know what I mean? To the women and stuff. You know, you had a mother, you know what I mean? You have a sister. You know, it made me start to reflect on different things. So by the time he came back with that next book, you know, even though I was thinking like, man, I'm gonna read this one book and this motherfucker gonna stop coming at me with this dumb stuff. You know what I mean? Like that was my intention. But when I read that book and it had that aha moment and I'm looking around and I'm thinking like, this dude can't tell me nothing about my life, but I'm looking around in prison. I got 39 years in prison at the time. I know I'm going to be in here in a long time, and I'm looking around to all these older dudes. I'm like, dang, this dude been in here 20 years, and you act like some of the dudes that just came through the gates. Like, what is that? You know what I mean? What is that makes him that's 60, 70 years old act like this youngsters that coming in here 18, 19, 20 years old and still got the same mentality he did. You know what I mean? I remember Nas wrote a song called Second Childhood. You know what I mean? And in the song, he was talking about the people who come out of prison with the same mentality that they went back in. They back on the block. They hanging out with the same people. You know what I'm saying? They riding the same cars. You know, they don't never change their mentality. You know what I mean? And that's something I can recognize. I see it right in front of me. You know what I mean? And that really piqued my interest. Like, damn, man, maybe this dude on something. You know what I mean? Like, damn, because some of these dudes really ain't men. That's not what I feel is a man, really. And then he started to tell me a different definition of what a man is. And that's somebody that's more responsible to himself, responsible to his development, responsible for his to his community. You know what I mean? So now I'm open. I'm open to explore my try to find out what that circle I'm wrestling against, why I'm angry at life. You know, I want to figure that out. Why am I angry? Why is shit so unfair and fucked up? You know what I mean? Come across Fred Hampton. Fred Hampton was my first leader that made me really reflect and say, damn, man, That's what I really want to do with my life. Like that dude right there was powerful. He was 21 years old.
That's a good first one.
Yeah. and I've been modeling like everything I'm doing off of Fred Hampton ever since then. Like it surprised me when I got out of prison. I was like, dang, nobody been doing the Fred Hampton playbook. like that's like winning. Like we going. That's a winning strategy. You know what I mean? Like so when I just to segue to this, like that was the trajectory that led me to Hy Thurman, that led me to y'all. You know what I mean? When I started to really wake up for the first time, and I started to internalize what Fred was talking about. I started internalizing what Huey was talking about, George Jackson. You know what I mean? Then even expanding and learning about Marx, Lenin, Mao. Like I read a lot of Marx in there. It took me a while to understand what the hell he was talking about. You know what I mean? I was like, but he deep once I started figuring out Lenin, Mao, Che Guevara, Franz Fanon. I got tatted on my side, the wretched of the earth. I did that on purpose. I wanted to remind myself every day. He said and then on the other side I have every generation out of relative obscurity must discover its mission, fulfill it or betray it. So that was like a testament. I wake up every day and I'm like, man, you gonna fulfill it or you gonna betray it? And every day they come in here fucking you up. They messing all of us up off in here. They dehumanizing us. So it was always a reminder, like, this is what I'm supposed to be on. You know what I mean? But it started with Fred. Fred was the first one. Power anywhere there's people. We got the power. That's what he said. It seemed like they got the power over us. You know what I mean? Because they more organized. The state is more organized than us. But they don't outnumber us. I started seeing that in prison. Like, how all these guards, it's only 2 guards or 3, 4 guards in this whole building. Is all of us and y'all scared of them? You know what I mean? Nah, man. We know there's something wrong with this ratio of equation of fear. It's disproportionate that we looking at a small group of people that's keeping all of us in check, and we actually worried about how they're using their organized strength against us. We outnumber them. You know what I mean? But then when you start to learn about different revolutions, you know what I mean? You start to learn about like Mao. They started off in 1921, 1923. But it was a protracted struggle. And it coalesced to them coming to power in 1949. When I looked at Che Guevara and Fidel, you know what I mean? They out in the mountains. Like Fidel, I thought Fidel was a little wild. I was like, this dude a little crazy, but I like him. You know, I like all the people that they say is crazy. Like they get off the boat from coming from Mexico and the grandma, and there's like 85 of them. And they get blitzed by Batista and them. Knocked off almost all of their soldiers. It's only 12 of them left. Him and Che Guevara, I'm imagining what Che Guevara thinking. He laying down in the field with their little guns and stuff, and they being surrounded, and Fidel just starts screaming out, yes, I know victory is ours now. And I know Che like, what? Like, we being surrounded, they killed everybody. Like, what the hell? Why am I following this crazy, man? You know what I mean? But they had that determination, and they recognized where the people were at. The people was ready for change. You know what I mean? And Fidel and them came to power. They overthrew that dictatorship. You know what I'm saying? These are the type of lessons I started to learn. I was like, man, real people can change history. You know what I mean? Like, we have to first understand that the power lies within us. And then we have to connect with the people where the people start to internalize it themselves and turn it and making it into a material reality. That's what we mean by all power to the people. That's what we mean by boots on the ground. You know what I'm saying? So I came out here with that mission. You know what I mean? And ever since then, been pushing this in a way where I feel like the people more and more like sharing the strategy, you know, that we talked about. You know what I mean? I don't know. I know we being recorded, so I don't know if we want to let them know the strategy, but we coming. Boots on the ground. You figure that out, what that means. You know what I mean? We coming. But we going to show the people like how to empower themselves. You know what I mean? We going to expose the contradictions in the system. You know what I'm saying? When we finally take the reins of history, think about this, the people. We take the reins of history. We no longer give that power up to other people, the Democratic Party, the Republican Party. We no longer want other people to lead us into our own oppression. We tired of that. We not hearing that no more. You know what I mean? When we get to that point where we not listening to that shit no more, and we saying we listen to each other, because each other, we really experiencing this oppression together, and it's only gonna be us that's gonna free us from this oppression. When we get to that point, we gonna look back and be like, damn, man, damn, we waited a long time to get to this point. Now we are the ones controlling history. We wrote ourselves into history. You know what I mean? We ain't just reading it, we actually making it. That's what Marx was talking about. You know what I mean? And when we get to that point, we're gonna realize from here on out, you know, that we can make the world that is actually gonna be in the interest of our species. You know what I mean? We ain't gonna have to worry about depleting the climate and trying to figure out if climate change is gonna kill us. You know what I mean? Because we actually are being empowered to make sure we have forests, we have clean water, we got housing, we have everything to satisfy the needs of the people. We don't have to go to work 16 hours a day for some of us. You know what I mean? We can go to work 4 hours a day using this high technology that capitalism gave to us, that we're going to expropriate. You know what I'm saying? Using our interests. And then we're going to be like, dang, man, we could have been living this life a long time ago. You know, building up a culture that's going to really be validated to our humanity. Where we ain't gonna feel alienated, where we ain't gonna be walking around with fentanyl in our veins and stuff no more, because we actually already find meaning in life right now. We high off the people, we high off the life that we actually out here making a reality. You know what I'm saying? That right there is what I want to segue to now. The meaning part. Leon Benson. Again, this brother had a powerful effect on me. He gave me this book called Man's Search for Meaning. But I want to talk about his story and how it relates to it. Because it was his story that really made that book seem like bigger than life to me. You know what I mean? When I came across, when I read it and I understood what he was saying, I was like, dang, I'm seeing this through your own life. The meaning of life that you get out of life.
Carl Jung?
This is Victor Frankl wrote this book. And this on page 145. And I'm going to start with this because think about if you was this brother. You know what I mean? If you was Leon Benson. When I ran back into him on his administrative, on this administrative segregation unit, I got a chance to read some of his paperwork. I wasn't the best legal mind, but after I read over a number of his legal documents about his case, I was absolutely convinced that LB was 1,000% innocent of the crime he was in prison for. In fact, he wasn't just innocent of the crime he was in prison for, he was also innocent of the crime that he was placed on administrative segregation for as well. If there was ever a person who was saying that life was rigged against, it was him. Out of the 25 years he did in prison, over 10 of it, like around 10 of it was on lockup for something he didn't do even in prison. Think about that. When he was in G cell house, some Aryans, these are white supremacists, had retaliated against some guards who had assaulted one of their members. This occurred about 2 months after my stabbing case in the same cell house. I had stabbed the CO, Clark. They killed the prisoner in there and some other stuff. I was retaliating, trying to figure out what a revolutionary was. At the time, I thought that was revolutionary. You know what I mean? But, I learned, after, my trial and errors, what real revolution is about. It's not necessarily isolated incidents. You know what I mean? They had beat up a number of guards behind that. Internal Affairs afterwards came to G cell house, attempting to get guys to give statements so they could build a case against those responsible. If you refuse to cooperate with them, they would simply send you to the SHU, which was the Supermax lockdown unit, 23-hour lockdown, and place you on administrative segregation status for years. That's what happened to LB. He had nothing to do with those guards getting beaten, but because he refused to cooperate, they sent him to the SHU as a retaliation against him and several others. All the guards knew that they were only white dudes involved. However, they placed a number of black dudes on the SHU on administrative segregation status behind that incident as well. Years later, when I ran across one of the dirty guards who had gotten assaulted as well, she told me that she knew LB wasn't involved. You think she did anything to help him? Absolutely not. It's crazy how some people's lives can be so unfair and illogical. If you didn't realize how the system actually worked, you would have thought shit like this could never happen. But I witnessed this stuff happen to this brother firsthand. In regards to his murder case, they used one eyewitness to build their case against him. He would be the first to admit that he was a drug dealer. But there's nothing in any statute that says because you was a low-level drug dealer that this is cause for you to be incarcerated for a murder you didn't commit. Anyhow, on August 14, 1998, Leon was arrested for killing this white man named Casey Shawn. The prosecutor used this white woman with the last name Smith to build a fabricated case against Leon. She had initially claimed that the killer was a dark-skinned black male who had on a black t-shirt and some black jogging pants with 3 white stripes down the leg, Adidas brand. Leon is light-skinned. Despite claiming initially he was dark-skinned. This is someone who was 49 yards away, wore thick glasses, and had less than 20/20 vision, and it was dark outside when it occurred. Yet this was the person the state relied upon to get the 60-year conviction against him. There were 2 witnesses that testified that Leon was in an apartment building with them when this occurred. There were 3 witnesses that testified to him having on different clothing than what Smith said the shooter had on. There was another person who testified asserting that a completely different person was responsible for that murder. The more I read, the more I was surprised that they had found him guilty, even at the second trial. The first one he had gotten a hung jury on, so they retried him less than 2 months later. Until I met him, I would have never believed that a person whom the prosecutor knew himself wasn't a killer would be doing years in prison. Years later, people in Casey Shawn's own family started to suspect that Leon was innocent as well. Yet he still resides in one of Indiana's prisons to this day. If that isn't injustice, I don't know what is. His case is more common than a lot of people think. Leon shared a book with me by Viktor E. Frankl called Man's Search for Meaning that illustrated to me where his strong fortitude came from. Like I mentioned above, LB was one of the most intelligent people I was fortunate to meet while serving my own time. Often admired him for his strength and his perseverance, despite being in prison and even on the shoot for things he wasn't guilty of. I admired him tremendously and will forever be thankful to him for letting me read that book. It would be the lessons that I learned from that book that would help me endure and overcome the many bouts of depressions throughout the years in prison and once I was finally released. Viktor E. Frankl had been a psychiatrist before being sent to a Nazi concentration camp during World War II. He was trying to uncover a very important phenomenon of human civilization. He was trying to uncover what is the main motivation that universally drives us all to wake up each day to live life when life is about suffering. Unbeknownst to him, he would discover the answer to this question under the harshest conditions of suffering in those Nazi concentration camps he had been forced to endure. Imagine being sent to a concentration camp and not knowing if you would be sent to the gas chamber every day you woke up. Imagine being worked to death and being fed minuscule portions of food every day while being forced to do hard labor. Imagine wearing the same dirty, stinky clothes every day that barely stays off the cold as you are forced to shovel snow during blizzard weather conditions. Imagine seeing people quickly ripping the shoes from someone's feet soon after they died just so they could have shoes to wear to survive. Imagine being 200 pounds when you first arrived to only weighing 115 pounds from food deprivation over the months and years. Those were some of the conditions that Viktor E. Frankl and many of the Jews and communists faced in those Nazi concentration camps and places like Auschwitz. It was there that he witnessed people lose all hope, all meaning, and eventually die. Frankl said that they would obtain cigarettes to trade with other prisoners to have a little food to eat. He said if you witness someone actually smoking a cigarette, normally they would be found in a corner somewhere dead in a few days later. No one smoked cigarettes unless they had given up. He said he would witness these people before they died and the look on their face would be a hollow emptiness. But when he started to compare these people to those on the opposite extreme, he began to get a glimpse into the psychological answer he was trying to uncover. Despite being under the harshest conditions, the people who still had the capacity to wake up and still find humor in their day or zest for life, their very disposition spoke to the ultimate thing we wake up for, knowingly or unknowingly, meaning. He realized if someone still possessed meaning, they will be all right. It was when they lost meaning and fell into what he termed an existential vacuum that they would soon afterwards perish from hopelessness and welcome death. He said we can find what he termed a will to meaning in a number of ways. He said you can find it through love. Some people in those concentration camps woke up with the will to survive simply because they wanted to reunite with their wife or husband or kids that they so deeply loved. They gave them the necessary meaning to endure the suffering without giving up. Others, he said, were driven by their belief systems. If they believed in God, it would be their faith that maintained their desire to live and survive. He didn't mention those who were atheists and simply held on to their communist desires of revolutionary change as their will to meaning. But I can imagine that there were many communists who had the same will to live and survive for that reason alone as well. I think I think one of the ways that people find meaning that stood out to me are those whom he said find it inside. Those categories of people are people who are faced by a predicament in which they can't change their fate. But looking inward and being forced to look towards self-development as a meaningful path or purpose, one can find self-fulfillment and a sense of triumph like no other. This latter meaning comes about by being forced to see the potential in oneself that wasn't readily apparent before. Viktor E. Frankl's will to meaning was writing that book, highlighting the motivation that drives us all. He said it isn't mainly power or pleasure that motivates us. There's many people who do drugs every day but lack meaning. It's a lot of people who are just existing and trying to cope in their existential vacuum. There's others who have millions of dollars but extremely unhappy while in their existential vacuum. But then you have people like Leon Benson, who had 60 years in prison for something he didn't do, but woke up every day with a lot of meaning driving him to live and survive throughout the years of suffering unjustly. He wanted to clear his name one day. He wanted to get back to a home to the people he loved. He wanted to be able to help others who had endured what he had been forced to endure. I learned a lot from LB. He was a huge inspiration to me. If he could find the will to mean and persevere, I sure as hell could. I wanted to get out of prison and prove to my mom and family, since they had always supported me, that I could do something positive with my life. That was very meaningful. I wanted to find a woman I could love unconditionally and show her the black love still was possible and able to endure. That was very meaningful to me. Also, like Viktor Frankl, wanted to write a book about my own life one day that could help others see their own potential and make a transition to a revolution. One of the main will to meanings for me was my revolutionary ideology itself. I wanted to get back out and do the same sort of things the original Black Panthers did. Since I couldn't change my fate, I took the time to better myself by reading books and trying to answer the biggest questions of life. I figured if I did that, then I would be equipped to help others find their own will to meaning, ultimately in this revolutionary movement. That right there is the reason why I named this book, My Search for Answers, Truth, and Meaning. You know, again, it comes to realizing like when we had those aha moments and we internalize what those aha moments. And some of this aha moment for me was like looking at a brother that was in there innocent. Time to get talk about everything. We even talk about metaphysics, dialectical materialism. Nobody know what the hell we talking about. You know what I mean? But me and him. But that was meaningful, you know, just talking to his brother and him sharpening me, I'm sharpening him, you know what I mean? But knowing that he's innocent and I'm guilty for what I'm in here for. And I'm looking at him and I'm like, dang, man, he still wake up with a smile on his face. Like he got a genuine laugh. Like I knew about his daughters and stuff before I even got out and met him in real life. I was like, man, your father love you, you know what I mean? Like he wake up every day talking about y'all and what he want to do when he get out there to reunite with his family, you know, and sometimes some of his family wasn't there, you know what I mean? And it's understandable, especially with kids. Like they trying to figure out their life, and once they get in a certain age, then they start thinking about things outside of themselves, you know. But that was kind of hurtful for, you know, a father to go through, you know, don't know if his kid is going to be able to connect to him or going to reject him when he get out, or even understand that he always cared about them, that it just was unfortunate situation that happened to him, you know what I mean? But though that right there, seeing him and him still have meaning in his life, him reading about Viktor Frankl, and like, dang, that dude, like he went through those Auschwitz and concentration camps, he found meaning in life. You know, we all have prisons. You know, we all have prisons. It could be poverty, it could be a child molestation, it could be rape, it could be post-traumatic stress being in wars, it could be colonialism. You dig what I'm saying? That a lot of us face out here. You dig what I'm saying? But when we find that will to meaning, like when I gravitated to revolutionary politics, you know what I mean? It helped me find that why. You know, I was angry most of my life, but now I'm putting a circle around it. Capitalism, colonialism, neo-colonialism, you know, and it's not just abstract now. I can concretely say what those things is. You know what I mean? And I can define it. You know, I can see Barack Obama. He a neo-colonialist. And he's an imperialist. You know what I mean? You don't represent me. You might look like me, but I'm not buying that identity politics bullshit. You know what I mean? I'm going to tell the people all the bullshit you doing out here. You know what I mean? And that you really don't represent us. You sitting here to really lull us to sleep by the Democratic Party. What y'all been doing, trying to co-opt us. You know what I mean? But my point is this. You have to find it within. You got to wake up every day. Being a revolutionary is being an existentialist too. It's waking up every day saying, what is my will to meaning? Why am I waking up fighting for the people when this is suffering? Why am I waking up going against odds that's for a lot of people is insurmountable? You know what I'm saying? Why am I sacrificing my life to this? You know what I'm saying? When you find that why, you can wake up every day and be like, look, it's a sacrifice worth living. You know what I mean? And that's what I want to convey to y'all today. We had to find within the revolutionary movement, be able to project that will to meaning to the people too. If we don't get people to see the meaning and the sacrifice and the suffering that taking on this life will be, you know what I'm saying? They're not going to join this. You know what I'm saying? They have to find meaning in it. You know what I mean? And they have to see this movement that we're building. Thank you. Any questions for any of us?
I have a comment.
Mm-hmm.
I really liked your explanation of being a male versus being a man.
Mm-hmm.
Just because it's something so few people understand. Like male, you were born a male.
Mm-hmm.
It's a biological characteristic, and it's males and females are found throughout the animal kingdom, but only humans are men, women, boys, girls, etc.
Right.
and it's like you had your own definition of being a man,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a complex definition and a deeply personal one, and it's a positive definition. Like it showed, being manhood. It doesn't have to be this like negative, oppressive thing. It can be like a real liberating thing. So I know that passage wasn't necessarily meant to be like a master class on like gender identity, but like it was a really, really good explanation of that distinction.
And it was like decolonizing my mind from patriarchy too. You know what I mean? Because if you think about it, I said a lot of males live out the power of their testicle. And I kept on talking about things that this machoism, machismo type of way of thinking that comes from capitalism, imperialism, and patriarchy, where men, we gotta be able to fight, we gotta be tough, we gotta be able to have as many women and have sex. The definition, if you think about it, like we way more than that. Like we fathers, we brothers, we uncles. We revolutionaries. We love. We hurt. You know what I mean? Like humanity is a lot more complex. You know what I mean? Even and one thing talking about the gender and sexual identity, orientation and stuff like. That was one thing I learned from the Panthers too. Like Panthers was the first one. I want to say he wrote that piece, the women and gay liberation movement in 1970. I want to say 1971. Huey P. Newton, like that had a profound effect on me. He was like, man, the LGBTQI community might be one of the most oppressed. Yeah. You know what I mean? When I hear people in our own community, like anti-homophobia and gender. Attack gender identity of comrades and stuff. I question that. I'm like, man, look, I was a bigot once too myself. You know what I'm saying? But I had to transform my way of thinking on different issues if I was going to take up revolutionary politics. You know what I mean? The oppression that Black people went through, we should never look down on any other demographic. We should actually be glad that people gravitate towards our forms of struggle against the system and say, look, like we honor like what the civil rights and Black liberation movement, and we take up some of these same strategies to find our own liberation. You know what I'm saying? Women liberation, gay liberation, whatever liberation that we're the people is fighting for. You know what I mean? But that what there is part of the process of like we have to redefine gender relations, social relations amongst the people. In some ways, it's been like rigid. You know what I'm saying? And it really don't reflect our real humanity. You know what I'm saying? We know, like even in the animal kingdom, we know that animals, male and female, don't necessarily attract. Like we gotta be honest with ourselves with science. You know what I mean? And this is another part of us building that political consciousness as revolutionaries to understand like what we supposed to be fighting for out here today. You know what I mean? But we have to live this within our own life. We can't just talk about. We actually have to live that experience. You know what I mean?
I had a question. If we're in the question and answer session.
Okay.
Are we?
Oh yeah, that's what we are.
We are. Okay.
Well, I have one for each of you. Kwame, so you were so influenced by readings in prison. Have you been able to get your book inside prisons? And
Oh wow.
have you thought about that?
Yeah.
And Hy, I was interested how some of the White Panther comrades came to revolutionary politics. So like of the people you knew, were they revolutionaries before Chicago? Did they come to that thinking in Chicago? What was some of their like trajectory?
Talking about White Panthers?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or I'm sorry, of the Young Patriots.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
No, we were not that political, but outwardly, but because of our upbringing, we and what had been happening within our communities, with the oppression and all we were going through, we started becoming political. We knew what Marxism was, but we didn't put it into words. We knew what it was, and we believed in it because of, the working conditions and how we were raised. But we had our own political, and the Southern people have their own political beliefs, and be it coming from the church or politicians or whatever. They don't really know how to explain it a lot of times, and sometimes it comes out in indifference. I think that's one of the things that you can contribute to their, racism, white supremacy, classism. So a lot of times in which we were talking some last night and today about, how do you reach people? How do you reach these poor people that have no way of expressing themselves? But that's what I've tried to do in this book, is to express exactly that, and how people can develop their own sense of equality and realize that, the politics that they've been raised in and the environment that they've been raised in has really affected their radicalism, or if they become, political. A lot of it depends on the environment. Others depend on people working with them, and we had, we were fortunate to have some people who were, I'd say left wing political, working with us, the new left. And some of that came directly off the college campuses. Some of that were, people that, we had to try to understand, and hopefully they'd try to understand us, So that's the Young Patriots was just a typical street gang, street organization. But we all had our own politics, and as a group, we could come up with different politics. So it's with us, we just had to develop it. We just had to figure it out, and it wasn't really easy to figure out. It was a struggle to figure out, but we started figuring it out, and some people couldn't. They were like, "Yeah, I don't believe in this stuff." It's
Right.
I was raised, racist and stay racist, for instance.
Yeah.
So people had to question their own selves, but it took a lot of talking to other people about it too, because you can't change overnight. It's not anything that you can do when you're raised in that environment, of racism. So it's something that has to truly affect you, I think, first. It could be somebody has a friend, that's going to help you. It could be just something that's happened to you in your life that's made a change, And that's probably about the best in my life, in terms of. I was fortunate to have some people who were questioning at the same time, and I started questioning, and so would I be where I'm at now if I hadn't had that group of people? But it did.
What about in relationship to like the Young Patriots today, or the White Panthers? You know what I mean? Like some of the organizing and stuff like that they're doing. What type of like community? Yeah, I mean they're rooted in right now.
White Panthers. You're talking about White Panthers. I guess you can talk about that, but.
Yeah, that's fair. So, I mean, the main group of White Panthers is in Northwest Indiana. So they do a lot of organizing in Chicago. They made an inter-community garden named it after Hy.
I saw that. Yeah.
They have free food boxes there. They do harm reduction. I recently moved to New England, so I'm still trying to, get my feet wet there. But I am working with Alyssa from the Young Lords, and we're trying to get our feet wet in housing issues. Primarily, we've been doing distribution events so far, but we want to, expand to do temporary shelters or, eventually more, like housing takeover type stuff. But yeah, it's pretty much where we're at. The goal is to much like Hy is talking about, reach out to people who don't necessarily agree with us, and like try to prevent prevent these people from being recruited by white supremacist organizations. We're trying to give an inclusive alternative.
Because people feel like unheard, they're going to gravitate to the group that they feel like is willing to hear them out. You
Right.
know? And if it's not us, there's some really terrible alternatives.
Yeah, exactly.
I would say to answer your question. So my book is banned in Indiana prison. Like 3 weeks after it came out, like 3 weeks later.
What about Philadelphia?
I've been hearing like other prisons around the country. They've been letting them in and stuff in those prisons. I don't know how long that's gonna last. But the reason and LB was the one, Leon Benson, who I dedicated this book, was the one that told me why they banned it. And of all things, they banned it because I work with street organizations. They said, "Oh, he works with gangs and stuff." Like when we did the first time, they told him they banned it. They told him really the real reason. They said, "Well, Kwame did that thing in 2020 July with the street organizations where I brought the leaders that was instrumental in starting these street organizations in the 60s." But the whole premise of the program was called "Taking Back Our Community." We was telling the people in the streets, like, look, y'all gotta stop killing each other. Y'all gotta stop selling dope. Y'all need to start building up your community, not destroying your community. But that's a threat to the power structure. You know what I mean? Like they don't want to hear that type of message. You know what I mean? They talk about stopping crime and violence and all this other stuff. That's all PR. We amongst us right here, we all know that's not what they really own. We know why the drugs out here right now. We know the Freeway Rick story, Ross stories. We know the El Chapo stories, working with the DEA, letting him ship drugs over here. That's never been. You know what I mean? The U.S. government, they was messing with what's the dude down in Panama. You know what I mean? So this what they do. But I take it as an honor because in prison they start banning all the books about Black Panthers and stuff. By that time, I had read them all, almost all of them. I was on Marx and Lenin. They was letting us get Marx and Lenin in because they didn't even think it was no communists in there. But you gonna ban all the Black Panthers, even Martin Luther King. You know what I mean? I was like, okay, y'all ban that. Let me see what Lenin's talking about these. Let me go to Faggot. You know what I mean? I'm going to where the Black Panthers got it from. You know what I mean? So I take it as honor they put me on the list with those type of individuals. You think it's that much of a threat? You know what I mean? Cool. Yeah. Now people gonna really want to read it. For real. Any other questions?
I got a question for Hy. You had mentioned something about the Poor People's Campaign in your book. I was just curious what that relationship you guys had and what the original Poor People's Campaign looked like in Chicago.
Okay. Well, the original one back in the 60s when we went, a group of us went to Resurrection City.
Oh, cool! You did.
And lived out there I was there about 3 weeks. But somebody poisoned the food on the bus, and I was sick for over a week. A lot of us, some people went to the hospital, and other people had to just stay people's apartments until they got better.
Don't eat the tuna fish on road trips.
Oh no, don't eat anything on those road trips.
or the
boy.
beans that Sherry got.
Yeah, and it was a good relationship. But I will tell you, the leadership we weren't that really keen on. And I've said this before with Abernathy and Jesse Jackson. We had to go get a contingent of people to go to a hotel to get them out of those rooms so they'd come down there with us. They were up there and they said, well, we need a headquarters. And we said, no, we need you down there with us in the mud. And so, tell you the truth, living in Resurrection City was terrible, but it was good meeting the people there, and forming a bond. But the new one, the new Poor People's Campaign, I have been asked if I would be on the state steering committee, Alabama, for them.
Really?
And I wasn't sure if I wanted to do that. And then I started thinking, what other groups are you working on? And one of them I said, do you work with Poor People's Army? And there was silence. I was like, I didn't know, a lot of this until today. But then I did go down and I did speak at one of their programs in Birmingham. And I think it was, who's the person's name? Well, I better not be mentioning any names. One of the leaders there had invited me down. But then after that, when I had inquired about, your organization, and I haven't heard anything from them since then. And I didn't know why. I didn't know why. And I got in touch with someone and said, what is this? And I didn't hear from these people anymore. And they didn't really tell me, but today kind of explained, why. Because they knew that I was getting involved with
with a really revolutionary group.
Yeah. Yeah. They're not revolutionary. They
pigs.
Yeah.
They do the work of the cops.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Constantly. And like where you go on Wednesday is like, one of their main headquarters.
Mm-hmm.
Where they did some real devastating stuff to the community and the people that were out there trying to figure out how to house the homeless versus to get them swept away. And they did I helped to sweep them away for whatever kind of bargain they got from the building.
Yeah, I just didn't trust this, the new Poor People's Campaign. I think one of the problems they have is, and I think it's happening all over the board or all over the country, let me know if you agree with this, but back in the 60s, you couldn't get any credit at all. I mean, if you're poor, you couldn't get any credit. If you did, you'd be totally ripped off, with the high fees. And then I think they got smart and said, well, let's give poor people credit. And all of a sudden people are getting credit, they get credit cards, whatever. And I think over the years, and their intention was to camouflage the word poor. Okay. And like one of the problems I know that the Poor People's Campaign is having is in talking to people, some people don't want to be referred to as being poor.
Yeah.
And we talked about this. We talk about this a lot. They got I got the big screen TV. I got the phone. I got the laptop. I got the same thing as Joe over here, who's an executive's guy. The only difference is Joe's not in debt and you are.
And paying higher interest rates.
Yeah.
than Joe doesn't make it into his problem.
Yeah, and
Working 2 jobs.
And you have a hard time convincing people that, you're poor, So I think that's one of the big problems that we're having You know, I have too in my organizations and talking to people. And I go, people are homeless, and they just like, I'm not poor. I'm getting a job tomorrow, or I'll get a job. You know, well, you are. You know, and that's part of the problem around the country now.
Yeah, and you know, a lot of the ways because we struggle, you know what I mean, even to put that in our name, you know what I mean, when we had our meeting back in Temple, like 98 back then, and you know, we had to explain to people exactly where we was coming from when we was talking about poor. We wasn't talking about poor as in your income.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We was talking about like being able to have, you know, control of means of production. You know what I mean? You being able to be like, oh, I can control, you know what I mean, my destiny, my life, you know what I mean, you know, financially versus to like whether you make $250,000 a year or you making like less than $6,000 in cash, like all that can be snatched away from you. You know, and then where are you at now? And so just over the recent years, like last, you know, over 25 years, like we all been talking about this new class and stuff like that of people being poor, but people have literally been adjusting to a lower standard of living. You know what I mean? So they feel as though like I'm gonna snap back. I'm gonna get back. Everybody's trying to get back, and like it seemed like the finish line is getting further and further away.
Yeah, it is.
You know? And so,
Student debt.
yeah, you know, and then you know, even for parents to be like to go through a struggle just to put their kids in school, and kids get loans is like we struggle plus your loans, and you owe all this money, and like we missed out on a lot of different things just based on trying to get you an education that you're no longer going to be able to use.
Yeah, they're still at home to get a job. With
to
that.
be able to get,
Get
you a job.
Yep.
Yeah. No, but I totally, you know, see like me, like I constantly grapple with history, you know what I mean, and dealing with the present, you know, not from like not like me. I love history, you know what I mean, but I have a hard time, you know what I mean, trying to like follow history, you know what I mean, and my thing is that it's nothing really new under the sun, but things are always swift and changing constantly. Nothing stays the same. The air that I breathed like 2 minutes ago, now my body and all that stuff is not the same as it was 2 minutes ago. And that's the same with everything. And so like being able, like I said earlier, being able to be swift and changeable like water, you know, and take shape based on the day and time that we're living in, you know what I mean, to be able to move forward and set, you know, just like the move the meter in a sense, to move it, you know what I mean, like all those great things in history, because we can go all the way back. Those are really things that we can step on, you know what I mean, and keep moving the meter, you know what I mean, closer, you know, to this revolution. Because, you know, we got Nelson Book over there and stuff like that, and Nelson was always, you know, constantly explaining, you know, about like, you know, it's going to happen. There's nothing we can do. Is, you know what I mean, things are being polarized, and at some point it's going to come to a head. You know what I mean? And like, it's nothing we can do to stop it. You know what I mean? We have to be prepared and figure out when it happens, how do we shape it and move it towards the future that we want to see for the generations to come. Versus instead of fascism, allowing them to throw the police state in there and having us locked down, like, you know. And so, like, I appreciate, you know what I mean, being part of the Rainbow Coalition, because, like, the well-studied, you know what I mean, and, you know, the reading, you know what I mean, a lot of people have done, you know what I mean, and it allows us to be able to, like, sit around and build off of that stuff, you know what I mean, and talk about it, not regurgitate it, you know what I mean. That's what I don't like, because, like, over the years I've been in so many different settings where people are able just to regurgitate stuff, you know, and me, I'm looking to be with other people that are sitting back saying, yeah, we heard that, we understood that, that was 1950, that was 1960, you know what I mean? This 1980, this was 1990, even for us, the work we did in 97, 98, that shit is late.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? To, like, I wish it was easy where we could just go over and take over houses. You know what I mean? Like it was back in the day, Hick of the list, go get these cribs and all that stuff. You know, but no, they got smarter. They started using, you know what I mean, the electric companies, the utility companies, all these different things to scare with the kids and you know, all these different tactics that they've been learning to figure out hide the list so people can't see it. You know, when we started, it was strictly HUD. You know what I mean? And PHA that took and managed all the health. Then they started with the California. I remember Golden State. I mean, that was the name of it, Golden something. I forgot what it was, but I know it had Golden in it, and they was from California. You know what I mean?
Management properties.
Came right in back in the early '90s and started managing the properties so that like we wasn't going straight at HUD. You know what I mean? We had to go to the managing. You know what I mean? People. So it wasn't like the federal. You know what I mean? You know, people in the feds was coming to court. They had the managing corporations come and that was overseeing the properties. Yeah, you know, and so when we go to court, it make it seem like we're taking something. Yeah, we heard the private property from these managing corporations, and so you know, they just got advanced, and I think, you know, as things go and progress, we have to figure out like how to take these lessons, because like you know, I appreciate when people say all the mistakes we made. Like we made a lot of mistakes, you know what I mean? Because it's simple fact, you know, I heard people say blueprints and stuff like that, but in my mind, I can't see it being a blueprint, because if it was, you know what I mean, I would have been the first one to go jump on and follow it and tell everybody, come on.
Right.
Now, it's some good things that are out there set in place that we should use and don't throw it out. You know what I mean? The baby out with the bathwater.
Right.
But we got to figure out, as this baby keep growing, how we start feeding the baby. We can't just keep giving the baby applesauce.
Right.
You know what I mean? The baby gets big as shit. You know what I mean? So I'm saying, as things change and adapt like that, that's how we have to do with our education, our work. And like I said, ain't nothing new under the sun. There was people way back when that told us, you know what I mean, you have to do all these things simultaneously. And we get criticized because people say, oh, y'all don't talk about the race question. Oh, y'all don't talk about the woman question. Y'all don't do all the different things. Y'all don't talk about the religion. Yeah, but we try to do it all. You know what I mean?
Right,
we try to
it's
do
not
it.
one thing.
We've not just one thing, but
it's interconnected.
it's all of them interconnected. And we
Right.
try to do it, whether we're working on housing, healthcare, education, you know what I mean, jobs, whatever. We see that them all connected. And I know, you said it like 1,000 times every time I see you. And the housing stuff that y'all do, because people think that's all we do. You know what I mean? They keep looking at us as like housing, y'all, because of the takeover house and a lot of things.
That's the press.
That's the press. That's what they put out there and put it on. But our real thing is about like creating leaders and paying for gold to build more cadres just like ourselves.
Right.
Now, granted, you know, I think we've been talking about it, and I think you said it too earlier in relationship to the young patriots. You know how, you know, it's just like if you get on a yacht. You know what I mean? The yacht might have like 1,500 people on the yacht. I'm not a yacht. One of those cruise ships. It might have like 1,500 people on it.
Right.
But there's only about like 40 people that work.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But they take people from one spot to the next spot, and people in line and, looking to them as leaders to get us from wherever we go out in the middle of the water to the Bahamas or whatever and bring us back. They not thinking they gonna go in there and start messing with the shit and doing all that stuff like that, because that's not the work that they've been doing.
Right.
And I think that's where we have to keep setting it up. You know what I mean? We have to keep moving in a way that, like, when this shit hit the fan, people gonna be able to say, oh, this group's
Get on the gaming cruise.
or even just like Indiana out there, like the White Panthers are out there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Boom. Like they close to Chicago. They got the young lords out there that are, like, it's going to be a way that the people are going to be looked to.
Right.
People that's going to be like, no, we're not going to allow them to take us into this fascism, and because everybody's going to be upset, and people are going to be like, where's the motion? And if we're not there, with this motion, people are going to do the rioting, people gonna be killing each other, stealing, robbing, you know what I mean, doing all the things that are, you know what I mean, that they want us to do because they know it's coming. It ain't like they dumb, you know what I mean? They know that like drones and all that stuff is easy, does it? You know what I mean? But they're not gonna do that. They're gonna let people like push themselves into like doing the wrong thing.
Yeah.
And so that's why, you know, all this is like great in line. You know, like even like your book, like the books y'all wrote, like they mad inspiring. You know, that's I haven't been to sleep in like I don't even want to count the hours, but like
You kept him awake.
but I knew I wanted to stay there and make sure because like I'm kind of like Kwame, like I read based on what I got to. You know what I mean? And I read all those Donald Goins books you said. I've been penitentiary too, bro.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I read every Malcolm X book. I read other book, like The Art of War, all that stuff. Like, boom, you ain't got enough of time. Either you can be a savage in there or you can feed your mind.
Right.
And some people be savages and some people feed their mind.
Yeah.
And so I think, like, out here, even though they say we free, but this is like a bigger prison.
Man,
that
real
we gotta
time.
figure out.
Yeah.
We gotta figure out how we're gonna feed our mind.
Right,
Or
right.
be savages.
Yeah.
And so I knew
I think I heard it coming again.
I didn't acknowledge it. Still, but I was like stand up stuff, man. You know what I mean? You know, and like it's something we really got to keep constantly. You know what I mean? You know, getting to other people. And the book, like, tour, I was like, you know, my hands have like 3, 4 more. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you know, every other year. You know what I mean? I don't give a fuck. Like, I just got to keep doing it. You know what I mean? Because these books are tools where academia gives you credibility. You know what I mean? Because you wrote the book.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you could be telling nothing but lies in that motherfucker. But, you know,
Yeah.
you got that joint published. And
You
shit
got
like
something
that in the
published.
book. You know, people will get your platform to put it out there. And I think we got to take advantage of that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
To make
Hell yeah.
coalition in this movement.
Yeah, and I think everybody should try to write a book of some kind, and it's fairly easy. You know, I mean, my book, for instance, is so simple. You know, I mean, short chapters, some of them are like 2 pages. You know, I mean, write down your life or write down about something, and then they're going to say, "Hey, come and talk to this place, and come and talk to this place," and you know, like you're saying, it's not necessarily what's in the book. It's because you friggin' published something, you know. You know, but you can use that system. And our reasoning for this is not necessarily the books. It's unifying, going out and talking to groups and unifying people.
Yeah. And that's like our whole, marches on the DNC and RNCR is like Galen was talking about. It's like practice for directing thousands of people in the street. You know, it's building cadre, and it's a way to connect to people who are like, you're talking about this issue that I care about. Like, all right, now we can talk about a whole lot more stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, and just a real quick thing about that is I taught a class in organizing, and one of them, and the whole thing about the class is, are you in the right organizing spot?
Yeah.
You know, are you a boots on the ground person, or are you someone that can do record keeping? Or are you someone, that can be doing this other work, writing, other types of support? And a lot of people are in the wrong, just in the wrong position.
To get people like
Yeah.
find whatever
And
they
you
do
know
and
what
get them.
And you know what I was gonna say? It just popped in. Like the young lords and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Just kind of organizing around what basically a lot what they have in common. You know what I mean? And most of it will be like, we all Puerto Ricans. You know what I mean? We live in certain areas. We like. It's some stuff that we do, and people say boots on the ground. We call it our ground game.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? That it's some stuff that we can share and pass on. You know what I mean? That groups like the Young Lords that are already like on the ground on one level. You know what I mean? That can open up mad doors. You know what I mean? And that's the same way we Sherry mentioned about the study group on Monday. You know what I mean? Like having more people that are And the study, because I can, most of the Rainbow Coalition, you know what I mean, people are well studied, you know what I mean, in relationship to past revolutionary and history. We kind of be working with a different sections of the population that don't give a fuck about nothing.
Right.
You know what I mean? And we're
Different
trying to
approach.
get them. Yeah, because I can't sit down and tell my friends and stuff about Marx and Lenin.
Right.
Like, I'm gonna fuck about Marx or Lenin. Tell me
Who
what
the hell is he?
we're gonna tell me what we're gonna do right now today.
Right.
Like
Well,
right now
he was
today.
saying, he was like, he had to start with these other books, and he kept hoping that God would leave him alone. You know? He start somewhere.
No, and that works when you got nothing but time on your hands.
Yeah.
But when you got to pay bills, you got to run here, you got to deal with a wife,
Right.
you got to deal with your relatives, you got to deal with a loved one dying, you got to live like that ain't a whole lot of time. Like you just sit down and just knock off like 3 books, 4 books in a month.
And sometimes it ain't gonna even be a book. It might be a documentary because a lot of people they more visual right now and they develop it.
Exactly.
We just gotta be creative in how we do some of the stuff.
And there's some people in the movement who been in the movement for 20 years
Sure.
who don't watch a documentary.
Right.
Like
Just
they're just around us,
Yep.
and through osmosis we teach them.
Right.
But they're coming and doing childcare every time. They're coming and making food for our events. We're driving people where they need to because they can play a role. And Matt always says, like, there's a role for everybody.
That's why I always emphasize what the Panther said. Most people learn through observation and participation. That's a lesson we should never minimize.
That's
what you're talking about.
Exactly.
Participant observers.
You got to tell me the reason why I'm gonna sit back and read The Art of War.
Yeah.
And I read it and I'm like blown away. I've been using it forever in the day. I'm like, The Art of War. You know what I mean? In relationship to my tactics, how I was able to survive the streets. You know what I mean? Penitentiary, all that stuff. Reading books like that. But I wasn't just going to read The Art of War if you just told me, like, these some good revolutionary books.
Right.
These are good books or something.
All right.
So what made you pick it up?
What made me pick it up?
Yeah.
I don't know. I pick it up because I do things for trying to be the brightest motherfucker in the room.
You want to sound.
No, I kid you not. That was me.
No, but that's another angle, right?
Yeah. And see, and like me being from the country and the South and being able to like be a comedian and go to any city, any country, any place around the world and still be myself and be all right. Like that's why I don't like talking about it because if I sit back, name all the countries I've been to, all the boards and stuff internationally, I said, people be like, you sitting here trying to brag about, the stuff that you did or whatever. That's why I like the book aspect because you can write it in the book, or get somebody else to write it, and it ain't gonna be like you just trying to boast and brag. You're really trying to teach the lesson. You're really trying to teach these lessons. And so.
All right, next up, Gail's book.
Yeah, no, my book. I don't want to book.
Called The Life of Gil.
Yeah, or Jaja. Yeah, no, because like I'm just jaded on a lot of shit. I already know that like the best things that they're gonna say about me is after I'm gone. You know what I mean? It ain't gonna be while I'm alive. And that's the same with Kwame in that book. You know what I mean? That book will be everywhere on the shelf when he's no longer here. You know what I mean? Because they're gonna figure out how to co-opt it and use it to spin people that are going towards revolution. How do we co-opt them and bring them back into the system, into the Democratic Party? And I'm not knocking it. I just know that's how they've done over the years, like they did with everybody. Malcolm and Martin, come on, man. Martin did a lot of stuff, but we don't know nothing about what Martin did. You don't learn in history like that. You know, you got to be on your chasing history, looking at the documentary, trying to read every book. So you don't know what, you know what I mean? He was part of the system itself. You know what I mean? So you don't, he wrote it, but like some of that stuff, you're like, come on, Alex. You know what I mean? He's not a friend to the room. Yeah. People think he is because he's a black man writing about roots and all that stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like you just fed right into, you know what I mean, the different stereotypes and like leading people on a path to be thinking like that's where we started from. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Because very little bit of roots Africa at the beginning. You know what I mean? They had us looking like cold savages.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
man,
And I've been to Africa quite a few times. And I'm gonna tell you, coming from the airport, you know what I mean, to them cities, yeah, some townships, there's some shanty towns and all that stuff. But when you get to the city, anything in the United States.
Yeah. Then you go back 500 years, you start reading about the Mali, Ghana, Songhai
All
Empire.
that.
You're like, hey,
Exactly.
we had emperors that had universities doing cataract surgery, translated. Like they knew about Socrates and Plato before Europe knew rediscovered it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, this was a great part of y'all history. Y'all know about this part of y'all history? Let's translate it for them, y'all.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? So yeah, we have to. That's why I brought up, and I know we about to wrap this up, but that's why I brought up like what a lot of black people think, like and white everybody in this country. Like we thought that our history started with slavery and ended with the civil rights movement. Like we got to go beyond that, not to like try to go back to a golden age. There ain't no golden age.
Yeah.
Like some of the pharaohs and stuff, they were class oppressors too. You know what I'm saying? You know, for real. But we should know this type of stuff to understand what everybody contributed to history. You know what I mean? Human history.
I forgot what book I wrote, and it was some French scientists. I was like, I don't know, I probably was like 16, 17. You know what I mean? And they was talking about, because like I was an asshole in my school too. So like these French scientists was talking about the bones and stuff that they discovered, you know what I mean, of, 2 million years old, you know what I mean, black woman, da da da, you know what I mean? I was like, we're finding bones and shit like that, and nobody in the class would even believe, or like I'm sitting in class in the country in Virginia, they're like, 3/5 of a man, you know what I mean? And like my whole class school was all white, you know what I mean? So when I smacked one, I had to smack like 9. You know what I mean? Which leads to do that stuff. You're like, when you're growing up around a bunch of whites and that's what they keep feeding you.
Sure.
Like either you could use it to like beat yourself down and demoralize yourself and feed into it, or you could do like I did, was like, I'm way better than y'all in any and everything. And whether it was sports, football, getting grades in school and all that shit, I just tried to make sure I win. You know what I mean? And that's still how I am today. I come from a nationalist background too. You know what I mean? Like some of my best friends were white, and I didn't like white people. You know what I mean? Because of all the shit that I learned. Everywhere I looked at in history, it was like, damn, they being devils. Everywhere throughout history, you could just look at the devilish shit, you know what I mean, that was being done. And then after just understanding like what's going to really change and what's going to win, and how, damn near 90% of the whites was being used too, you know what I mean? And relationship to just learning and studying about like the whole ending of slavery. That was like my thing, and the bus tour. Understanding that slavery wasn't good old Lincoln and the Emancipation Proclamation shit was a facade.
Right.
You know what I mean? That was like a great eye opener, you know what I mean, for me, as well as Welch, West Virginia, where like 90% of the people was on welfare, and it was about like 15 blacks in the town. You know what I mean? And I was like, oh.
That's where you grew up. Well,
No. I didn't grow up. That was on our bus tour when we was documenting economic human rights violations. You know what I mean? That's when I knew it was much bigger. You know what I mean? Than like a white and black thing.
Right.
You know what I mean? And that was like,
Yeah.
and that took a lot because it's hard. Especially like I said, I grew up down south.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? An all white community, and like racism was like a thing. Easy does it. But like I said, all my best friends were white because they were white. You know what I mean? And the people that I met and I knew, they didn't, parents was one way, but they was totally different. And their parents allowed me to be around. You know what I mean? So the parents were moving. So like come 80s, it was a little different. You know what I mean? In my community where it was just all predominantly separated. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think this was a real good discussion. Good come out here to, hang out with the Poor People's Army, the Green Party of New Jersey, Conrad here, the New African Black Panther Party. One thing I hope come out of this, and I think it will, after we talked about the strategy, you know what I mean? Nah, I ain't gonna tell y'all the strategy. You know what I mean? They was looking, they was like, is Kwame gonna say it? Is he gonna leak it? You know what I mean? But it's gonna, build unity amongst all the regions of, the Second Rainbow Coalition. And that's one thing I want to come out of this. Like, we working more and more together. Principal unity tour. Like that we gotta have that established unity amongst us. So we start to be seen as this national force that's starting to galvanize the people and stuff. So yeah, I want to say thanks to everybody came out tonight. Long day, retreat, book tour. I know everybody want to get some sleep or some rest, but all power to the people, to everybody.
Power to the people. Before we totally wrap up, though, the White Panther Party Minister of Justice pointed out that I missed probably our most important program. We are working on the UP Prison Ministry, which is outreach and education of incarcerated individuals. We've had a lot of discussion about prisons, obviously, and about working together. If that is something that any of you guys want to be involved in, whether it's writing letters or trying to get donations, or obviously the point is to build relationships with incarcerated people. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Okay. All right.
Is that it?
Yeah.